Welcome to More Precious Than Rubies, the podcast where we explore the lives of women who embody the spirit of biblical heroines in our modern world. I'm Ariana, and today is a special episode because I'm recording in Nairobi, Kenya, where I'm currently serving as part of the Theo Global team. Theo Global is a production of Sola Media where I actually work full-time. While here, we're hosting one of our 3 yearly symposiums for global scholars, an event that brings together thoughtful, faithful Christian leaders from around the world. It was at our Kenya symposium last year that I met today's guest, Flo Kagwamba. At that time, she was working with ACTEA, the Association for Christian Theological Education in Africa, which partners with Theo Global, helping make these events possible. Today, Flo is pursuing her PhD in education in the United States, and I'm so excited for you to hear her story, one that's filled with deep commitment to Christian scholarship and education. This episode actually kicks off a special global themed season of More Precious Than Rubies, where I'll be talking with women from around the world, or those with a global calling, who are using their gifts to serve in extraordinary ways. Flo, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I'm so excited that you've been willing to come on and talk a little bit about your life.
It is a joy to be here and actually to see you here. I mean, it's good to be back home, and it's been lovely just attending Theo Global this year and being able to see you. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, of course. You're normally working the event, so I'm sure it's been a fun difference to actually sit in and listen to the papers now that you're pursuing your education.
It has
as well.
been fulfilling.
Oh, good.
I think I could say this year Theo Global gave me a different feel where I sitting and listen and enjoy and I learn. And also learning from a perspective that now I'm a PhD student. And so some things are not too Latin, they are making sense, and so it's been refreshing, really refreshing.
That's great to hear. So to kind of give people a little bit of background about ACTEA especially, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to work with ACTEA, what the organization is all about, and then what led you towards your current PhD studies in education?
I started working for ACTEA in 2014. The chairman of ACTEA by then was my boss. I used to work at Africa International University. And unfortunately, he passed on in 2012. He had introduced me to ACTEA, the fact that he was a chairman of ACTEA Council. And so ACTEA was in a crisis because it didn't have a chairman. And so when they came into Nairobi to look for, the way forward, and the fact that ACTEA never had an office, it was an office by suitcase, where if we have a director in South Africa next year, then we pack our bags from Nairobi and we move to South Africa. And so when they decided to have a crisis meeting, the only person they could think of was me, because the fact that I had been introduced to ACTEA by my boss. And so they approached me. I helped them put up a meeting. And then when I came back just to check on how they were doing, I hear them whispering, tell her. And the telling me was the fact that they were interested in giving me a job to work at ACTEA. Unfortunately, as I said, my boss had just passed on, and it was very impossible for me to leave my office by then because there were transitions happening. So I told them I'll work for them, actually help them part-time. So I actually worked by helping them, not really being employed by then, for about 8 months. And then in 8 months, we had interviews for the director. And that's when they came in again and said, you need to give a response. Are you going to come in and work? And I said, now I think I will take it up. So when the time was right, after I finished my last assignments at AIU, I joined ACTEA. And so that is how I got to know of ACTEA. And I'm privileged to say that I am the person who moved ACTEA from Dola, Zambia to Nairobi, Kenya. Set up the first office of ACTEA, full-time office in ACTEA. Bought the furniture, put up everything, shipped the materials from Dola, Zambia and Pittsburgh, South Africa. And then we officially had a physical office where you can go to. And we actually had a director. So Emmanuel Chemengich and myself were the first staff to be fully employed by ACTEA. So ACTEA is very close to my heart. I'm glad that I go down the history as, one of the people who helped ACTEA into that point. And ACTEA has been in existence now for almost 50 years. Basically, ACTEA's work is to strengthen theological institutions by accreditation, support services, and scholarship, really research. And this is very vital for our institution, and especially in Africa, where we need to ensure that there is quality theological education. Sometimes also in Africa, we tend to be overtaken and we can be over religious, without having a firm foundation or right facts. And not everyone, of course, but depending in the villages. And so our main aim is to ensure that our pastors get quality theological education. And how do we attain that? We ensure that by ensuring that the schools where they are going to, they are offering quality theological education by ensuring that their teachers are coming from authenticated institutions and they have certificates that actually come from real schools. There is a good curriculum, that we just don't get curriculum from the Western side, but we actually have a relevant contextualized curriculum. And we have facilities, and that we are also taking care of our students, not only studies, but what else how do we enrich our students with community, with spiritual formation and all that. And we also have administration, which is my favorite part, because as you said, I'm taking a PhD in higher education administration.
Yes, I'd love to hear about
that. I am an administrator with my first degree and my master's in administration. So basically, I'm an administrator working with theologians. So I normally tell people that I'm a theologian by experience. But administrator by, profession.
Yes.
And I always remind them, even theologians need administrators because it's a very important aspect.
I think them especially, I often find working around theologians that their minds are full of so many other things that often the administrative things are the last things they're thinking of. So they need administrators for sure.
I agree. And you and I know that if you don't do the administrative aspect correctly, then you have no organization, basically. And so we have a standard under administration where we look at strategic plans and we look at the audited accounts, the board members, and, the mission and vision of the institutions and the review of the policies. So that's where I come in. And so after working for ACTEA for the 10 years, I was actually the ACTEA director for 9 months.
Oh my God. So you have director on your resume, I hope.
I became the director for 9 months, actually. It's interesting because people would come into the organization and say, oh, we have come to ACTEA. And I mean, the fact that we've served the whole of Africa. So they expected to see, a couple of people, lining up as staff. And then I'll be like, it's just me. This is Africa. But they had to look for a director because directorship in ACTEA, you must have a PhD.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't have that. But the Lord has really helped ACTEA. ACTEA has grown. As we speak, we have about 15 staff. And so last year, it has been a prayer, praying, asking the Lord to direct me what I should do for my PhD. And not necessarily PhD, I was looking for answers for my under the administration aspect, trying to see how best to serve my institutions. Our institutions have really been struggling with transitions and successions. So I used to make fun when I don't get to hear an institutions when I write them emails. I would always tell David, they are in transition. There must be a principal or a president who has either resigned or backed down or something is happening. And I can tell you I was never wrong. And so I think I started having the task of wondering why, what is happening, because especially being the center of education, we should know better in terms of preparing for succession. Yeah. And so out of this quest, this is what sent me to start thinking about doing my PhD. Bingo, I knew what I needed to research on. Successional planning in African seminaries that are accredited by ACTEA. I can tell you that we do not have this program in Africa, which is a sad thing, but I am happy to say that if I'm the first person to take this, then I can bring it home. Actually, one of my assignments is to go and take the study, contextualize it, and start feeding it back into the system. And there's a school in Ethiopia that has invited me to start helping to prepare for this program. They have a PhD in leadership and education, and so they want to add an administrative aspect of it. And so I see and I feel I am in the right path. The Lord has called me to this, and I'm able to help our institutions better. And the best thing for me to serve them better is to equip myself and then come in and give it back.
Well, it's been fun to see your transition into the States. We met at ETS this last year, the Evangelical Theological Society, right?
Yes.
And I checked back in with you. This has been the first time I'd seen you since you transitioned to the States.
Yeah.
And so it's been so fun to see you on Instagram, like in the snow, right? It's so much
know.
colder where you are now. But anyways, it's been so encouraging to see your journey as a woman who is from a different country, pursue something that, like you said, is not prevalent very much in your country, and to bring it home is really impactful for me personally too. And I hope for other women too who are maybe pursuing something where they're not many amongst in their field. And so to encourage them to continue pushing forward in hopes that they can make an impact in that area. So I'd love to ask you some more questions that will give our listeners a little more insight to your life. First, what were some of the unique challenges and opportunities you experienced as a woman working in Christian theological circles in Kenya specifically?
So my experience actually working with the seminaries has been more out of Kenya than in Kenya. But and of course, as you know, that theological education is more male dominated. And so when I started working for ACTEA, I was the only lady who sat in the council as the executive administrator for ACTEA. And so many a times when we would have the meetings and the chairman would say, gentlemen.
And me.
Yeah, and somebody will say, I think we have a lady in the room. So it was very easy to be forgotten. And the reason why I'm bringing it out of Kenya into the African context is because my challenges have been faced around Africa and not only Kenya. A couple of times, as I said, I do the assessment of institutions, and I tend to also look at the finances and the audited accounts, which is people are very uncomfortable. And so there are many times I would do assessment, and the fact that, you know, depending on the assessment, you have to be dealing with different departments, and most of the time it will be the administration assessment, you have to deal with the principal, and also you have to deal with the finance officer. And so I remember there are a couple of institutions I would go in when I'm introduced to, like, the finance officer, they're like, she's a woman. And I'm like, oh, what is with the woman and the accounts and the work that I'm doing? And I remember in a certain country that I went to, I had a sitting with the finance director. And of course, the finances were not balancing. And that is something we question. And so when I questioned it, the guy stood and shouted at me. And I was very shocked, actually, you know, and to the point the colleague was very shocked also. And actually, I was told he does not believe a woman can tell him anything, and especially, what do I know about finances? And so, because it was much of a trend in that specific country, I had to be very careful, you know, how I deal with them. Sometimes I'll have to also ask for help. But I have to say, it was also a moment of learning, you know, learning from where they're coming from. Because sometimes people have perspective and how they see people, depending on how they grew up, how they were told women are. Still continuing, I have to say. I mean, a couple of women I have had along the way still dealing with that. But at least I was able to talk. And by the time I left the institution, we were very good friends with a gentleman, you know, and he actually got time to say, oh, you do know your finances. I said, well, that is what I've studied, you know. Other challenges that you find, because my work consisted of lots of traveling. I was spoiled by the men, you know, they will carry my bag, they'll buy me lunches and dinners. I mean,
the one time when you like sink into your ladiness, you're like, oh, this bag is so heavy.
It's like, where are your luggages, and then they would protect me, you know, like their own, you know. Where is she? We need to protect her. And honestly, I really feel protected among them. There are many who encouraged me along the way, and they were proud of my achievements, and so they will cheer me on. Even now, as I take my PhD, there are lots of men who are supporting me and challenging me. Sometimes also the challenges that will come in is when depending, and in the theological world, sometimes when you're working, and especially now, I'm not a pastor, but I'm working in the office and I'm under the theological education. The assumption is most of the time you're there to serve tea. And I love our first meeting with women in theological education, which happened, I think, in 2023 in Kenya, where we had about 27 countries represented. All women came in. And the first thing that they said was like, they see us as, office tea makers, and so sometimes your opinions or your ideas are not really taken seriously. Yes. It's probably, oh, Ariana is here. Ariana, are you going to give me a cup of tea? And so it can be a bit insultive, I have to say. And so it takes grace for you to just take it in and ask the Lord to guide you how to respond to that. Mm-hmm. And the prayer that they see you as actually as, at par with them and not really inferior or under them. And so those have been a couple of challenges, but I have to say there has been joy of working with men. The encouragement part, as I said, they have been actually my cheerleaders. I take this. During this season of Theo Global, I have had at least more than 3 men who have sat with me, prayed with me, which has been awesome. How are you, Flo? How are you doing? We are praying for you. What are the challenges? And encouraging me, and giving me the tips, because they are PhD holders. They've gone through, and most of them have also taken their PhD in the US, and just telling me, when you've just done your paper and you're so tired, you need a break, just take a walk, You can tell they're deeply concerned. And so I choose to take up the joys because there are lots of joys with working with them.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that I noticed you said that's actually really a cool tie-in to a guest that we'll have later on this season. Mm-hmm. She was actually at our conference in Egypt that we had this past week, and her paper was on women's roles just in the Bible, in the church, but something interesting that she was saying when other scholars were asking questions, because that's an element of the conference, is when the scholars are able to ask the presenters questions. She was arguing that her argument wasn't a matter of feminism, and that was interesting that you brought it up. It's like, it's not a matter of feminism. It's just, what are the gifts and talents that God has gifted us? It's not about what do I think I deserve to do in this world. It's beyond the cultural word of feminism. I think a lot of people confuse that
Confuses
now.
It, because actually I mentioned to one person yesterday, and I said, oh, look, I have this paper that I'm writing on. So these are the questions I have. And the person said, I hope you didn't become a feminist. And I said, it's got nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
If you don't include the women in the ministry, it's like flying a bird with one wing, which becomes very difficult. Yeah. So you have to include the other wing, and when the bird flies with both, then it goes actually far and it's able to actually meet its mission. And so I'm a believer that both of us, men and women, have to work together and fly together with this mission and what we have been called for. And so it's not competition, actually. It is just how the Lord created us, because the Lord did not create us out of the competition. It was actually for man and woman to work together. And when they work together, great things happen.
Otherwise, he would have only created one gender. So on to the next question. How did your work with Theo Global and its symposiums shape your understanding of global Christian scholarship?
Most of the time when I was working with Theo Global, I helped a lot with planning. Yes. But I am so thankful that in between, I did get some time to listen. And I think I learned both ways, in and out listening to the presentation, but I also learned a lot from the people who came in. The joys of just listening to different perspective and different voices, the Western voices and the African voices, and how they see different issues around the world, around theology and Christianity. We all use different lenses. I think that is what makes Theo Global unique, that we get to hear voices from both the Western and the African voices put together, speaking on the same thing, and realizing that we are all looking at that issue or that theme with different eyes. It's not only one side speaking, but both sides, and how it also brings, different people from different places in Africa together, to just fellowship, learn together. Theo Global is doing something amazing.
Yeah, a few things on that. First, I think something really neat about Theo Global is our, I guess, catchphrase would be doing theology together. And I think that even outside of doing theology together with all of the countries that we involve is also just doing theology together as men and women. The more conferences that I've attended and the more women that have stepped up and written a paper, I feel more seen as a woman, even though I don't have my PhD and I don't have a theology or seminary degree.
Yeah.
I feel seen, represented by a woman who's up there and doing research and speaking her mind on a feminine perspective to a room of men that they know that they may push back at them, but they're not afraid. And I think that's been so inspiring to me. And I try to tell them after every time, like, please do this again. Please tell your female friends about it, because the more often we can do that, the more that we can encourage our female audience to do the same in whatever they're studying. We have a Theo Global journal that we've now published. And the important thing about the Theo Global journal is it's bringing global ideas to the West. And it's providing resources to people who may have never researched anything from a Kenyan or a, whatever other culture that they're looking into. More resources are becoming available. And we also have another book that we have out, Prophet, Priest, and King, that has female representation in it as well. And so just working for an organization that is encouraging female participation is encouraging to me. And so I love that you're noticing those same things there. So now that you're studying in the US, how has your perspective on education and ministry shifted or deepened?
I would say my ministry has deepened. It's interesting because, as I said earlier on, when I started thinking about succession planning and transition, of course, the fact that I've been in the field for years, so I know where are the problems. I mean, I know there are lots of problems, And it's interesting. We normally say, Americans are so planned. I mean, they have it all put together. And so I make my journey. I go to university, and one of my first lessons or courses was Introduction to Leadership. And so we are required to write a paper, and I decide I'm just going to dive in and start checking on succession planning and just see how they're doing it. And as a lot would have heard it, I connected with a professor. I was actually coordinating a book club on the university. The university was celebrating 150 years when I got into the system. And this book was looking into 1960, because they have the first volume. This is the second volume, 1960 to 1990. And when I read, because of course, for you to attend a book club, you must read the book. And so I got in and I started reading about the university, and I was like, there are serious problems of succession planning. And I was so privileged because the person who was leading the book club was the author of the book. And she has been in the system, she has lived the system, so she knew what she was talking about. And when I listened to this, and the story was how the board came in, and within a minute, the president of the institution had been overthrown, and there was another one in. And I was like, okay, these are problems that I see in Africa. And so I think my eyes, the first thing was like, this is a global problem. I mean, I knew there were issues, of course it's global, but I didn't know that this is actually what I was dealing with here is what I'm dealing with here. But also to learn how they are working into that differently. Some things are the same, some things are different. That's why I'm saying my ministry has been deepened. The fact that I understand things even better, but I also understand them from different perspectives. I think I'm privileged by the fact that I am in the state looking at how things are in the States. And so how advantaged I am is the fact that you get to actually pick the good things that are working, like at Andrews being one of the schools where I go to the university, and the fact that I'm working in institution effectiveness office, there are things I can see they are doing that are working, and then telling myself, then I will advise our institutions in regards to this is what is working for them. You could try it, and of course, and it's interesting that I have had the privilege, of course, also of telling the institution effectiveness office at Andrews oh, I was in a certain school in Africa and this is what they did. Maybe you could try it.
Yeah.
And I found, for the longest time, I kept wondering, why did the Lord send me in Andrews, Of course, as I said, this program is not in Kenya or in Africa, but I actually find the joys that they're actually also learning from me as I'm learning from them. And so I get excited to say I am taking this home. So after a week from now, I'll be presenting a paper at Women in Theological Education in Africa. This is my assignment of bringing the program home every year. Just talking to them of things that I'm learning, and just we all learn together into that. And so it's exciting. So I would say my ministry has been very enriched, and every time it's confirmed that I'm in the right place, and indeed this is the Lord's calling.
That's amazing, Flo. Yeah, I think I love seeing the ways in which our cultures can work together, and you can bring your knowledge both to the States and then from the States back home. That's a great way that everyone can work together, I think. Reflecting on Proverbs 31, what does it mean for you personally to be a woman who fears the Lord in your work and your studies?
It was a big change for me to move from here. I remember one colleague from my office said, Florence, why are you going? What are you looking for? I mean, you have a beautiful home, you have a good job, I don't understand you. And I said, when the Lord calls you, you don't question it twice. You pack your bags and you ask for the compass direction. Sometimes you don't even know where the compass is showing. So you'll have to figure it along the way as you get there. And so let me say that was part of how I moved here to the States. I knew beyond the shadow of doubt that the Lord had called me to take up this program for a cause and for a purpose. But I had not prepared myself to what kind of a life the US has. And so, the first few weeks were really hard for me. And why am I saying that? Labor in Kenya is very cheap. And so I had two nannies, one to clean my house, one to take care of my daughter. I came home, there was hot food. I would just take a shower, put my legs up, just have my dinner, enjoy. I mean, clothes are ironed, clothes are washed. So fast forward, this is United States.
I would say that's unheard of in the U.S.
And so the reason why I'm saying Proverbs 31 is, of course, what it talks of, you wake up in the morning, you feed your family, you take care of, your family. This is literally what you do in the States, halfly you do it. That's why I'm bringing it home. There are things I wouldn't do here in Kenya because somebody else is doing it for me. Sure. And and of course I am busy either traveling or working. But here is where you really ask the Lord to help you in the sense of balancing to take care of my husband, to take care of my children, to be there, but also to be faithful with what the Lord has called me to. That is, right now, it is to study, but I also work for the university. So the balance was not very easy for me. And also, I have to remind myself that my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I was really struggling with finding time to sleep. And so, I'm trying to balance to ensure that I am there for my children and I give them time. I'm giving my husband time, but by the time I finish my assignment and reading, and I've already worked a couple of hours at the university, there are times when my son would wake up and find I'm still seated the same seat where, I sat from last night. And so my prayer has been, Lord, really help me to do better balancing so that I also take care of this body that you gave me, that is, have it rested enough to be able to serve my family, because if I don't take care of my body, then I'll not be able to serve my family. I can't serve you, Lord, as you have called me to, and I will not be productive. I think that was one of the challenges that I really struggled with. I was telling someone, if I have survived 1 year in the States, I'm now able to survive another because I know how I played the first one.
Yes.
I mean, we had not even seen snow before.
Right.
And then of all the places, I go to one of the coldest places in the States. And then everybody says, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. So we are waiting, it's coming. And my Lord, when it hit, we didn't even have a car. And so it was like, we are in the house wondering, what do people do here?
How are we going to get out? Yes.
But yes, as a Proverbs 31 woman, I had to look for those clothes and clothe my family, pray over my family, in the process where they were devastated, because at some point even the children were devastated, moving them from what is known to unknown. And I'll be honest, I see the story of Abraham in a different lenses right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always known the story of Abraham, but I can tell you, I now don't take it very lightly. I normally say I'm actually better than Abraham, because I knew I was going to Michigan. This man knew nothing. He didn't even know where he was being. So he was like, pack your bags and go,
right,
to the land that I will show you.
Right.
So he had to trust that the Lord will show. At least the Lord has said Michigan, and I know exactly where I was going to. But the transitions are difficult, living that which you know. And I think for the first time in many years, because I was always on a salary, and I knew it is, and we are good. So my husband having to resign and support my vision, and my children leaving what they know to support this vision and this call that the Lord has called me, it was not easy. And so seeing Abraham's story, I'm always like, it was never easy. And there are times when I would call myself for a meeting. That's what we say in Kenya. You call yourself for a meeting. And I'm like, Lord, did you really call me on this one? Because I really need to see, the Gabriel story of the fleece wet and making it dry. And I'm like, Gideon, sorry.
Yes.
And I'm like, Lord, I think you need to make the fleece now wet so that I can really see. I think what has helped me is to be on my knees. And as I said, for the first time in many years, I have always loved the Lord. I gave my life to Christ when I was 16. But this was a time I solely had to surrender to the Lord with nothing apart from saying, Lord, I'm here. I have nothing. I have children. I have a husband. You have to provide. You don't even know if the school fees will be there in between. But you have to believe that He who called you is faithful to fulfill it. And I think it's easy said than done. And so my first few months were trials. And there are many times when I would ask myself, have I failed my family? By saying, let's move and leaving that which we knew and coming into this. But I have to say, Ariana, this 1 year I have seen the Lord providing. I have seen the Lord being physically there. But most importantly, my family has never been as close as we are right now. In the middle of figuring it out, we were there for each other, holding and saying, we are in this together, we shall survive it. But most importantly, we cannot unless we rely on the Lord and trust, and reminded that you trust in chariots, but we have chosen to trust in the Lord, and He has not failed us.
Flo, that's incredible to see how you've trusted the Lord as you've made a really hard transition. And I know that it can be really difficult, and it probably feels like a very weighty responsibility that you have for your family. And I'm so glad to hear that they've grown together through the Lord's provision. That's wonderful to hear. The last question that I'd like to ask you is, a recent study highlights how Kenyan Christian women leaders navigate traditional gender expectations while leading in ministry and academia. So how have you experienced this tension or balance in your own journey?
In Christian education or theology, it's a male-dominated.
Yeah.
I'm not very sure about the United States, because where I'm studying, we have enough women as faculty members. But I do know there is also a bit of struggle. But here in Kenya, women have not been fully accepted as faculty or leaders in theological world. And so you feel like you always have to fight battles, even when you don't need to fight them. Like, you always have to prove yourself. The culture believes that theological education or Christian education, or basically leadership in Christian institution, should be under the male. When women come in, it is the question is, you're very much doubted when it comes to the qualifications, and yet we have the qualification. But as I said, even when you have the right qualifications and you have, you have great ideas, they are never actually taken in. So a man can actually give the same ideas and opinions, and a woman does. And when a woman gives them first, they're actually looked down on. But when a man says the same thing, they're actually, they make a point, they actually make sense, which is really disheartening. I have seen that first in churches, of course, because I have seen church women leaders, they don't grow. It's the same space over and over again. Men coming and overtake and go up, and we have amazing pastors, we have amazing women leaders, and it's disheartening. As I said, you always feel like you're in a battlefield, and battles can also be very tiring. So the question is, how much long are you willing to hold? So if you give up in between, so you find these women, resigning. And I love how sometimes you're told, oh, she's found another job and she's happy. She's not happy. She just moved because, she could feel she was unwanted. Yeah. And so you also find that they are not fully supported. And so, for example, one of the papers, as I said, that I wrote was, you find that the only time sometimes the women will be supported in their leadership, like in organization, is maybe when there is fund or an organization that is giving funds says there must be women. And so you find that's the time the women will be put in leadership because the funds dictate the same. But you can imagine if the funds are not there, then the women will not be supported. And of course, you feel the reason why they've been put there is because of the funds, not necessarily because you believe they are capable. You believe actually they can be able to achieve this. And it's also demeaning when, your points as a leader, woman, you're not taken seriously just because you're a woman, not because you actually do not qualify. We have amazing women in Kenya who are qualified to take leadership in Christian institutions, but unfortunately, they are never taken seriously because we believe, and I think it's culturally, growing up, we knew that women are not meant to be pastors. Yeah. Women are not supposed to take leadership. You should be the helper of the man. And so when you're in leadership and you're giving commands or, giving guidance, the thing is, are you being really led by a woman, And it's not even a Kenyan thing, it's an African thing,
It's a
culture.
US thing as well.
It's a culture.
Yes.
Who are you? And so it's difficult. And we have a program in ACTEA Women in Theological Education. Basically, one of the things we are doing is encouraging women, and especially the women who have gone ahead of us, to create mentorship programs where they encourage the women who are upcoming, because sometimes they give up too early, and just to encourage them. This has been the battle. The battle continues. We fight, we march, because you have to remind yourself who called you, who are you serving. But once you realize you're serving the Lord, it's the Lord who has called you, then you have to march on.
And He's walking alongside you.
Yes, and He's walking alongside you, and then He will ensure that, He will see you through. Mentorship is very important. I know it's something that I didn't get myself, and so swimming through theological education as a woman was really difficult. And especially if you don't have a supportive boss, then that becomes really hard. And I remember, let me just give you a bit of story. I remember working at Africa International University. We would sit at the Senate, my boss, who was the chairman of ACTEA, the gentleman who introduced me to ACTEA, I love Dr. Karu. He used to say, oh, by the way, we are here as a Senate. Everybody serves themselves tea. Everybody here is on, the same base. Nobody is higher than the other. He would really make it clear. Nobody is higher than the other. Why? Because there are many times you'd walk into the meeting and you'd be, Florence, pour me a cup of tea. As in, you're there for a cup of tea. And women are believed to be secretaries.
Right.
So you're there to take minutes and do whatever, nothing else. And I'm happy to say, like in ACTEA right now, we have our board chair is a lady.
Wow.
So it has been awesome because we came from 0 lady in ACTEA leadership, as in the governance, to 6 women in the board. Wow. So it's amazing also to say that people are actually coming up, but I think also building mentorship is also helping. We are not yet out of the woods,
right,
but at least we are doing something towards, encouraging especially the upcoming women in leadership to soldier on.
Well, Flo, it's been such a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing such rich wisdom from your journey from Africa to the States. Your story reminds us that faithfulness in one season prepares us for impact in the next, and that education, service, and calling are not separate threads, but part of a beautifully woven tapestry in God's hands. So thank you again for being our guest today.
Thank you for inviting me. And I would love to tell all the women out there, please don't be discouraged. If the Lord has called you, continue knowing that if He's called you, He's faithful to ensure that that which He called you will survive and will grow. And I have seen the Lord in my life and working, and He's not failed. David said, I'm young, I'm old, but I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor the children begging for bread. And I've seen for sure the Lord being faithful.
That's wonderful. Well, maybe you're in a season of transition. You're starting something new, or you're wondering if the faithful work that you're doing today matters. I hope that you'll let Flo's story encourage you that God is working through your yes, just like Flo just said. So whether you're pursuing education, raising your children, supporting your community, or working behind the scenes, your faithfulness is forming something beautiful. Again, this conversation is part of our global themed season on More Precious Than Rubies, featuring women from around the world or those with a global vocation who are making a kingdom impact across cultures and continents. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in next time as we continue to explore the lives of remarkable women. Until then, you are worth far more than rubies. Set about your work vigorously with arms strong for your tasks. Open your arms to the poor and extend your hands to the needy. Charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.